Activated.
Analyzing.
Update complete.
If you haven't seen the first part of this series, the episode called A Victorious Dominion, click in the top right-hand corner or check the description. Watch that first, because if you don't, none of the rest will make any sense. With that out of the way, let's just get into it. When we left this scenario last, the Dominion had achieved complete military victory. The Klingon and Federation forces had been shattered. A small task force comprising Sovereigns, Intrepids, Akuras, Birds of Prey, and probably the Prometheus class, and whatever civilian ship could make it, would escape, either through the deepest parts of Federation space or through Klingon space. The Dominion would quickly consume the other small empires, either through war or diplomacy. The Romulans, having betrayed the Federation when it was clear Starfleet would lose, invaded Federation space and secured Vulcan and several other minor territories before the Dominion could gobble them up. I didn't discuss it then, but while this was a traitorous act to the Federation, it was a saving grace to the worlds that fell to the Romulans. At least for a time. The Romulans, which now were the strongest allies of the Dominion in the Alpha Quadrant, had retained the territories they attacked. Though they would bow to the Dominion true, the territories they had gained would stay with them, and their higher status as a subject would be put onto those planets, including Vulcan. This meant that those territories would not be subject to some of the more tender mercies of the Dominion. The Klingon Empire would be wiped out. All races that were once previous subjects to the Empire, including the Orions, would be offered a higher citizenship status and leniency if they would help hunt the remnants of the Klingon Empire itself. Ultimately, the Klingons would be all but gone, their race nearly extinct. The humans would not fare better. Tens of thousands would initially go missing during the beginning months of the Dominion occupation. A few months later, a new species would start to show up on Dominion ships. A species that would be advanced engineers, though slaves that would work on the ships and do the dirty work of the Dominion. Not long after this, an advanced form of the quickening would be released onto planet Earth, and humans would live with this disease, giving it to their children. Any form of advanced technology would cause them horrific and catastrophic pain. Dominion propaganda would state that this disease was infectious, that all other races should stay back. The Hobus event would be all the Dominion would need to invade Romulan space and ultimately break the Romulans up into several different territories. This would be the final nail in the coffin for the Alpha and Beta Quadrant. Both would be broken and ruled by the Dominion. Vorta overseers with their jem'hadar enforcers would ensure that the Changeling's order would be absolute. It would be a grim universe, but not hopeless. The Dominion, even though having defeating the Alpha and Beta Quadrant powers, would not be prepared to deal with the deceptive resistance of the Alpha Quadrant. The Gamma Quadrant powers they defeated had all but given up. The Alpha and Beta Quadrant powers were not as docile. Passive resistance would continue. Also, we know that by design, Dominion ships were generally slower than most Alpha Quadrant power equivalents, at both sublight and warp speeds. Additionally, unlike many Starfleet ships, and indeed even other empires, the range of the Dominion ships would be quite limited. Jem'hadar vessels could only carry so much white, of which the Jem'hadar relied on, and their vessels were not designed for long-range or deep space discovery. Most Alpha and Beta Quadrant powers could outrun and outlast their Dominion counterparts, especially in a guerrilla war. On the last video, a lot of people brought up, rightly so, that there were several factions that would stand up against the Dominion. Chiefly among them, we have evidence that Gul Dukat intended to create some form of a coup to, at a minimum, kill Weyoun, but more likely overthrow the Dominion altogether. We also know that Section 31 would not just roll over and be destroyed. Their machinations would always be felt in the background. Additionally, the Romulans and Tal Shiar would never just bow to overseers without working in the shadows. And as we stated last episode, it is very likely that Romulan shipyards that had been kept off the books would be hard at work creating more Dodera decks, Valdor, and Scimitar-class vessels. It is likely that after being subjugated, the Dominion would have made no friends of the Tholians and several other minor territories. And also out there somewhere we'd have the Klingon Federation fleet that had fled to the outer edges of known space, to say nothing of Voyager. And most importantly, let's not forget Odo, someone who would work from within to lighten the strict hand of the Dominion. So the players were there, leaders, ships, and an agreed upon hatred of the Dominion. The pieces just needed to be put into place. While some might disagree, I don't find Dukat to be an idiot, until they made him an insane lunatic mid to late Dominion War. Those events not occurring, I believe Dukat, Odo, and Janeway would play vital roles in bringing the necessary elements together to kickstart the Alpha Quadrant Rebellion. The Tal Shiar in Section 31 would work in the backgrounds, continuing to sow discord and cause accidents where they could. creating issues in white production, shipping supplies, and taking out high-ranking diplomats. The Cardassians would continue to be loyal to the Dominion, openly at least, as the Dominion continued to scale down their military. More and more Cardassian ships would go missing after this, destroyed by pirates, raids, or other phenomena. The high number of losses might be odd, but everything would seem to be in order. Investigations would definitely show debris from battles and Cardassian ships. Everything would seem to be in place, if not a bit off to Dominion investigations. And then, Gul Dukat, leader of the Cardassian Order, would make an unscheduled trip to Deep Space Nine, where he would somehow find an audience with Odo. And this is where the spark of rebellion would occur. After this meeting, Odo would take a more active role in Dominion politics, to the delight of changelings and Vortas alike. He would assume the role of leading the Cardassian and Romulan territories. With Odo as the new overseer, the scale down of Cardassian ships would accelerate, with entire fleets being removed within months. These fleets being ordered to shipyards by Odo himself. Odo would reach out to his Romulan contacts, ultimately finding the Tal Shiar and the Romulan remnants. Though, with admittedly a lot of effort in convincing them he was on their side, I do believe he'd be able to bring the Romulans into the fold. With Klingon space effectively a graveyard, a build-up along the Romulan-Klingon border would make the most sense. It's unlikely they would be caught. Even with all of this preparation, the most logical and necessary action to take would be the destruction of the wormhole. No real fight could truly occur with the wormhole available and the resources of the Gamma Quadrant able to still flood into the Alpha Quadrant. It would make sense that both Gul Dukat and the Romulans would want to destroy the Bajoran sun. We know that this can be done and would result in the destruction of the wormhole as well. I don't think that Odo would be willing to do this, however. In all likelihood, we would have seen Kira executed, and I doubt that he'd be willing to allow that fate to befall her people. Even if we assume she was still alive, then definitively this wouldn't be allowed to happen. However, the destruction of the wormhole wouldn't be too hard to do when you had cloaking devices. There were multiple ways discussed how to destroy the Bajoran wormhole in Deep Space Nine, and when you add to that you have the Valdor, Dideridex, and Scimitar-class vessels at your disposal, this isn't going to be that hard. Now they had a plan. They just needed a diversion. It's at this point that I believe that Odo and Gul Dukat would either be able to deduce that a Federation fleet survived, or would be approached by Section 31. Making first contact with the Starfleet Klingon remnant would be very delicate, but vital. Most likely a Cardassian or Romulan ship would be dispatched to find them and host a meeting. Once contacted, the new alliance would ultimately be formed, though again with some finagling. And ultimately a plan would be put into action. A strike force comprised mostly of the Starfleet Klingon remnant would meet up with a contingent of Romulan ships. This strike force would then begin an all-out assault from the Romulan-Klingon area into former Federation space. The Dominion forces would quickly move to stop the Federation strike force. Odo would order that a large contingent of his forces in Cardassian space move to assist the insurrection. The Dominion forces in both Bajoran and Cardassian space would quickly move to stop the Federation strike force. And then, with the majority of the fleet gone, Odo would be beamed away in front of his Vorta and jem'hadar. A fleet of ships including Valdors, Scimitars, Keldons, Galors, Galaxy-class, Akira-class, and others would decloak, surrounding Deep Space Nine. The Romulans would move quickly to destroy the wormhole and a message would be sent, with Odo having a gun to his head. All jem'hadar and Vorta were to surrender, or watch one of their gods be killed. With the wormhole destroyed and Deep Space Nine secured without much damage, the Cardassians would revolt across their worlds, Dukat giving the word as a full-scale uprising was occurring. Their diversion successful, the Starfleet Klingon Romulan attack fleet would turn back and retreat into the depths, to circle around and meet up with their counterparts in Cardassian space. But this would only be the beginning of the rebellion. Next time we'll see what occurs when Voyager is able to finally make contact, and an overbearing Dominion regime attempts to quash the Alpha and Beta Quadrant rebellion. Stay tuned. And finally, Janeway will come to the rescue. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope the wait was worth it. Let me know your thoughts. Did I go wrong somewhere? How do you see it happening? I mean, obviously this is only one way that it could have gone. There are infinite ways. After I finish this series, I'll also be doing a series on if the Borg attacked during the Dominion oppression, and what would have happened if the changelings had been killed. Also, just as important, next week I'll be teaming up with Attackwing to do a charity event where I'll be making videos based on how the battles go, and you get to choose the scenarios. So stay tuned. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and guys, I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.